Well, we've kind of had enough for the moment anyhow.
Yeah.
But the feeling in Europe at that time was pretty prevalent that there was going to be a conflict between the Russians and the West. Uh, one thing that we did, I had mentioned or I didn't mention earlier, that I was attached to George Patton's army for a while. And when we were making our headway with the tanks, they stopped us. If you've seen any of the George Patton story, we could have gone into Berlin in nothing flat and taken Berlin, and they would have surrendered to us. But I believe there was a political deal made because the Russians, of what had happened at Stalingrad and other places, they wanted to annihilate Berlin. And so we, for the last weeks of the war, we just really sat and held in place and let the Russians go in and take it. We could have taken Berlin. Patton could have gone into Berlin and they would have surrendered to us. But politically, the decision was made that the Russians would be allowed to go in, which created a lot of problems after the war with the split up between the Russians, the French, English, and Americans having different zones. And Berlin was right in the middle of the Russian zone. You're probably too young to remember the problems that were there in Berlin when we had the airlift to bring stuff into Berlin because the Russians wouldn't let us bring our trains through.
Oh.
So we had to fly in. That's getting way off the subject, I know.
That's okay. Is there anything that you'd like to add that we forgot to ask about?
Well, you didn't ask me very much.
Well,
I just kind of rambled on, didn't I?
you did a good job. You did just fine.
Yeah, there's a couple of thoughts. I'll tell you one of the thoughts that I had is that when all of these fellows from around the country were drafted or came into the Army, or Navy, whatever it happened to be, all of a sudden you have a breakdown of these barriers. People who lived north never knew anybody from the south, the east, or the west, and all of a sudden you met these guys and they became your friends, and you said, well, gee, I heard a lot of unusual things, but we all kind of melded together so that after the war it was very easy for people to move back and forth from one area to another. I think the South is probably half filled with people that moved from the north down south anyhow. But that was a big coming together, I think, a breaking down of a lot of the feelings that people had about different parts of the country and different people and so forth. And the only thing they didn't solve was the black problem because they were not integrated at that time.
And
But
Tuskegee Airmen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had the thing that they ran when we were over in Europe during the war. They ran the Red Ball Express, and that was the 2.5 ton. The war I thought was one with the 2.5 ton trucks, the Jeep, and the C-47 planes. Those were the backbone of everything. But these fellows, and they were mostly black, they ran the supplies from the harbor up to the front on these 2.5 ton trucks, and they did it back and forth through. They did a wonderful job, and they were under battle conditions too. So we didn't see too much of them except in that particular capacity.
That was the Red Ball Express.
That was called the Red Ball Express. Yeah, there were a lot of things of that nature. You talk to, the one thing after the war though, like I'm talking to you now about things that happened during. I never talked to anybody about this because everybody I knew had been in service. So I remember running for public office, and guys said, well, should we put down, I was in the Airmen, and I was here and I was there. I said, well, we all were, so what's the sense of doing that? Everybody you knew had been in some sort of service during World War II. And it was quite a melding thing. And the guys, after World War II, you have a lot of things like the American Legion, VFW, Knights of Columbus, these different clubs were built by the World War II guys. They came out and they got together, and their families all got together. Now it's more difficult. Families are spread around. There's a lot more interest. But there was a lot of concentration on people being together. And most of us had pretty good sized families, so we all grew up in neighborhoods and everybody was very close with one another, very close. We had a lot of things in common. And children, I think the children came up during that period of time were very fortunate. There was still a lot of safety. You didn't worry about your children being outside playing. The neighbors looked after one another's children. It was a community type thing, and that was very, very important.
Why don't you show me these pictures?
Well, yes, if you'd like to.
Where'd you get that for?
For being an American in the campaign.
All right. This is a European, African, Middle Eastern campaign.
This was.
Let her get a picture
This was
of
all of the fighting in Europe and North Africa. That was the main medal. And on here, you'll notice that there are 3 bronze stars. Those are battle stars. Battle stars for the Bulge, for the Ardennes. These are main battles that we participated. So each one, they gave us a battle star for each one of those.
And when did you get these medals?
Well, actually, I got the medals. I got the little top part when I was discharged. But then a year or so ago, we don't have that article there, and that's the one from the other newspaper. But a year or so ago, I had written to the War Department saying I'd like to get my medals, because I never got medals. And I got a note back, yes, we were going to do it. In the meantime, I think it was one of our, Katie or somebody, contacted our local congressman, Mike, and he got in touch with the Department of War and said, you know, I got this guy in my district who wants to get his medals, and
it's only been 50 years.
Yeah, well, so anyhow, we got the medals. They were sent to him, and then we had a big, unfortunately we didn't bring it, but we had a party in the backyard. We had a lot of friends there, and Mike came over, and they presented me with my medals.
Now this one says efficiency, fidelity,
good conduct,
and honor.
Some guys didn't get those. Yeah, we got a good conduct medal.
And this is just says World War II on it.
Yeah, this is the World War II gentleman.
Camera's over there. There you go.
Then you had the little one, which is, this is marksmanship. That's a carbine. When you were in the airborne, you didn't have the big rifles because of space, so we had little full-handled carbines that we carried. And that's what that was for, being able to do that. But we had small guns.
And this handsome fella here?
This is taken after the war in Austria. We went to a local photographer there, and I took a picture of myself, and we had one of Nick Shaheen and Salvatore also.
Okay, who's all these guys?
Now this was in the pub, the town pump in Fayetteville, which is a camp just outside Fort Bragg. This is Cy Yeager, Bill Shaw. This, I never can remember this guy. This is Mike Brummer, and this is the young man that was killed overseas.
Do you remember his name?
Sure.
Well, what is it?
It wasn't Johnny Lupoy. No, it was the other one. Johnny Lupoy. I have 2 that I say prayer for every Sunday. I can't remember. Anyhow, he was behind the lines. He was doing engineering survey work, and a shell landed in. Wow. He was a very close friend. He was married in service. His wife had an apartment in Fayetteville. They had a child there too, and we used to visit him in his apartment and so forth. Now, recently this is Mike Brummer. I talked to him down in Florida a few years ago, and this fellow lives up in Midland, and people saw that article that was in Detroit News about World War II. Yeah. And he called me on the phone. I hadn't talked to him since the war. No, I shouldn't say that. No, we had, actually, after the war, we had 2 reunions in Detroit. It's such a small outfit. We probably had about 30 or 40 of us who got together a couple of times. So I did see him at that time. But
it's okay.
this fellow, I'm sorry, Jimmy Weary. It was Jimmy Weary, and at church every Sunday, the first two people that I pray for are Jimmy Weary and Johnny Lupoy, because they were the two closest in my outfit that were killed. Now this is one that we filed. This was filed with the World War II. This is in Washington. And anybody that was in the war during service or did something during the war can be registered there. They don't put your rank in it. I think my wife put sergeant up there, but they even with the generals, they just show their picture of where they were. So this has a list of the various battle stars and places that you were and so forth. And I guess this is one of my granddaughters drawing. I see all of a sudden.
There you go.
It must have been a Lena picture.
Probably.
But I was fortunate to get through the war, not particularly come out with any mental scars, although I'm not sure my family always agrees with that. But I've been very fortunate. I've lived to be 81. Unfortunately, most of my good friends, even out here in Howell, have kind of passed away on me. There's only a few left. But it's been a great experience. I would not have missed the Depression, World War II. Wouldn't want to live through them again, but I would not have missed them as far as, I think when Tom Brokaw said the greatest generation, I feel yes, and I think I'm part of that generation.
Thank you so much for coming and telling your story.
Thank you.